What's up, guys? This is Jay here with Fantasy Labs, bringing you our MLB podcast, breaking down the Friday, May 20th, 15-game slate. I'm joined here with Pete, known as CSU Ram 88 around the daily fantasy industry. Pete, I know you're feeling pretty good. You want to let the listeners know how you did tonight? One game in particular, I guess?
One game? Oh,
Whoa.
I shipped the Playboy seat, which was I wouldn't even call it a success at this point. It was just a relief more than anything because I've dumped my fair share of money into that tournament, but certainly feel good about that. And the big victory today for me, well, there's two. One, Jay, I got Reese's miniature cups for the pod.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Pretty dominant. I'm gonna have one here in a second, and I also took I walked my first steps in like 3 months, essentially, like, well, 2.5 months. So
That's pretty good, man.
that's
Congrats.
pretty exciting. I'm walking like a little baby, but it's all right.
Wow, congrats on the walking. Congrats on the Playboy seat. But I think the most important is those Reese's for sure.
Oh, dude,
It's
definitely the biggest victory of the day.
Absolutely.
You were eating some Snickers ice cream before this for dinner?
Yeah, with Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like
pretty good dinner.
yeah, it's not bad. It's about
A nice Mountain Dew too, maybe, or something.
no, just orange soda, Orange Crush.
Oh, that's still pretty solid.
Mixing it up a little here and there. Yeah, not
Yeah.
bad, but
What about you, man? How are things? How are the games going for you? Are you did you have some success recently?
yeah, I've had a decent few days. A lot of break even days for me lately though, which I don't know. They're better than losing everything. So every now and then I kind of like enjoy breaking even. It's not stressful at all either way. So you kind of just sit back and pretend like you didn't play. So sometimes I long for those days.
I know all about that.
Good in betweener. So yeah, but let's go ahead and jump into the slate really quick and start kind of going through our usual routine and starting things off with Vegas data topic. Just kind of looking at this slate as of now. We're recording. It's like 12:30, but a lot of the top teams in implied runs. We have the Astros at 5 at the top. We have the Mariners at 4.6, the White Sox at 4.6, and then a bunch of teams right under that at 4.5. The Pirates, Mets, Nationals. That's actually all of them at 4.5. I got a little too excited there, but 3 teams at 4.5, and then you go to the bottom. We have the Giants at 2.7, facing the best pitcher in baseball, Jake Arrieta.
All right. Well, there's our first debate.
That's
You take Arrieta over Kershaw?
All right, second best pitcher.
Yeah,
right.
dude,
You're
come
right.
on.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, and then the Braves at 3.1, which is actually pretty high for them. And then the Rockies at 3.1 and the Brewers at 3.1. So I think looking at it, it's kind of standard in cash. A lot of people gravitate towards gaining exposure to these top scoring teams for the hitters and then targeting these low scoring teams for pitchers. Pretty basic stuff. I think in tournaments on this slate should be relatively spread out in terms of ownership. A lot of guys getting exposure to some of these middle teams that have varying implied totals. So Pete, kind of looking at this as of now, are you kind of focusing on some of these teams right now? Or are you kind of inclined to wait until things shape up tomorrow, maybe some lineups come out and any line movement you could take advantage of?
I mean, there's some things that stand out to me for sure at the start, and I definitely will take the lines where they close into consideration a lot more than where they are now. I think that's something that obviously we're doing a lot of these pods the night before. We want to give good information on which teams to be looking at, but I think one thing that could be really helpful is looking at the teams that maybe we've talked about that we're bullish on for tonight, and then having them have positive line movement would be a great sign. So that's kind of what I'm looking for to see. Positive line movement on the spots I like right now. Certainly the Astros stand out. I think, Pittsburgh is another spot that I really like quite a bit. We'll talk more about them in a second, but, we'll see what happens with the movement tomorrow. I think there's some really low team totals too that you can kind of look on the opposite side to see the pitcher, and hopefully we'll see, the reverse. You want to see the lines move down in those games. So, it's interesting, the night before it's always a challenge, but it does give you a good point of reference. And one thing that I've been doing a bit, and I know some of my close friends do as well, which I think will help you guys, is just try to identify some team totals that you might think should move up. Because a lot of these just get put out there based on, a lot of long-term data on these teams and these matchups. And we're looking at very specific things as DFS players. And can identify good spots for hitters, that might be a good team to think that might, move up as a team total. And when you see that, that's good. And if you can start predicting that, I think it's going to help you with your whole process of DFS.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a great point. I think I highly recommend everybody check out the Vegas page on our site kind of throughout the day, maybe 10, 15 minutes after the lineups are confirmed, and kind of see if anything changes. You can make adjustments in your process based on those changes. So that's definitely something important to look at throughout the day. Let's keep it moving and kind of kick off this slate and start with some pitchers. Kind of looking over the slate at this point, who are a couple pitchers you have your eye on? There's obviously one, my hot take.
Yeah, well, you got to pick pitchers first, and you didn't even take who you just deemed the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah,
Joke.
I don't know what I was thinking, man.
I mean, I love Arrieta. How can you not? Very curious to see how much money he gets given his age after, I think he's a free agent in 2017. I think he might have one more year left on this deal. I could be wrong on that, but we'll see what happens with him because he's been lights out. You look at all the advanced stats, he's great. On this slate, he gives up the least amount of home runs of any pitcher, which is no surprise. This is just he's an elite option. My one concern here is the Giants don't strike out a ton. We'll see what lineup they throw out there, but he's still the number one option by far on the slate. And surprised you didn't take him, Jay Sean.
Yeah, well, I knew I was starting ahead of you, so I had time to kind of get these in, and I was trying to be nice more than anything. It was such an easy pick. I just want a different route, and it took me like 30 minutes.
He's the best pitcher in baseball. He's better than Greg Maddux.
Oh, no way. He is. He does have some similarities, but
a lot of similarities.
Another thing I like about Arrieta a lot is he's pitching in San Fran, which is a great pitcher's park too.
That's true. He should go like 8 innings, get some Ks.
Should be solid, plenty solid for cash.
Right. The other pitcher that I have, I think it's tough. I like the pitchers that you have coming up here, but as a GPP play, I think Carlos Martinez is someone you can look to. Arizona gets a negative park chip going to St. Louis. He was terrible last outing, so anyone who played him recently might be feeling burned, might have some recency bias. So I think you can get him at a really low ownership. And he has a strikeout upside. So young Pedro definitely hasn't lived up to that, but he's still an interesting option for GPPs, in my opinion, tomorrow.
Yeah, he has the makeup of a complete GPP pitcher. Is one of the highest dud percentages on the slate. So I think you look at that alone. Maybe you combine it with his upside, and you kind of want to get away from him in cash, but I think he's always worth a flyer in tournaments.
His last couple games have been bad.
Really bad, yeah.
But I still think there's potential here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll start off. One pitcher I'm looking at is Garrett Cole. I do recommend him more on DraftKings, where he's 8,700. He has a bargain rating of 90%. He gets to face the Rockies away from Coors Field, which is always a good thing. His park factor is 91st percentile when adjusted for handedness and hit types of the Rockies. So, and then one interesting thing about this slate I was going to talk about earlier is that we have 12 pitchers on the slate projected to strike out 6 or more, and the top is 6.9. So it's a lot of pitchers crammed into within one strikeout projected. So I think this will show a lot of different ownership levels with these guys because nobody really stands out too much above the pack in terms of strikeout potential. And this is according to our K predictor, which of course looks at pitcher and hitter K rates based on batters faced and the lineup order. So Cole is projected at 6.5 strikeouts, which is 4th most. But really with Cole, I think the point is that nobody stands out more than anybody else. Cole has upside. He's facing a team on the road that hits significantly worse. So I like Cole in this spot. I'd probably lean him more tournaments. I don't mind. I think on this slate you can find some value and pay up for Arrieta in cash. But I don't mind Cole in cash if there are some hitters that you really come up on the slate as are less value plays than usual, and you just really have to save money somewhere. I think I'm fine fading Arrieta, but it's not something I'm looking at doing as of now. And then another pitcher I like quite a bit is Aaron Nola. Facing the Braves, I much rather prefer to take lefties versus the Braves. They lead the league in strikeout rate against lefties. We just saw them kind of get owned by Jeff Locke tonight, which is really, really humiliating. So I still don't necessarily mind taking righties against the Braves. Against this offense, it's just so bad. Nola kind of has a high enough floor for me that when you combine it with the limited upside of the Braves, I think I'm fine rostering him, again, in cash if you choose to fade Arrieta, despite Nola's implied low-ish strikeout total. So he has an 80% consistency rating this month at 5 starts. I'm kind of hoping for 6 to 7 innings, 5 to 7 strikeouts, 1 to 2 runs, which is pretty solid in cash if you're saving 3K fading Arrieta. So, and then also his advanced stats in the last 15 days, exceptional batted ball data, lowered exit velocity, distance allowed, and hard hit percentage. So he's definitely a guy I'm looking at as well on the slate. What about a guy you're looking to fade overall on the slate?
Well, first, golf claps. Great analysis there, Jay Sean, on the pitchers. I love all the advanced stats. And one thing I just wanted to add, we talked about, looking at the lineups for line movement. That's a huge thing when identifying which pitchers to take, is identifying lineups that might have some weaker players in it, especially weaker players who strike out a lot. So make sure you're paying attention tomorrow, and you'll see the K predictor move. There's lineups that we're not expecting. So great analysis there. Pitcher that I'm looking to fade. It's a really kind of, I don't want to say a bizarre slate, but it is a trickier slate trying to figure out where to go. Kluber, I could see fading. The guy that I chose is Jose Quintana, just because the Royals don't strike out as much. The other concern I have is that the Royals get a nice park shift going into Chicago. But there's a lot of guys that are decent. I think your play as a fade is actually going to be somewhat of a popular pick, and it's a good fade as well. So who are you fading, Jay?
Yeah, I'm actually fading Steven Matz. And it's not really for the matchup. Targeting the Brewers is something I've done a lot as of late, especially with Ryan Braun banged up. And now we got Domingo Santana, who missed another game today, a late scratch for like his, 15th time this season being a late scratch. So they've definitely struggled to score runs lately. There are a lot of positives when you look at Matz on the surface. The Mets are, as of now, minus 197, favorites to win, which is second best behind the Pirates. Brewers are implied to score just 3.1 runs, tied for the second fewest. So I prefer targeting the Brewers against right-handed pitchers, where they lead the league in strikeout rate. But I think Matz is still fine. But the real problem with Matz that I'm worried about is kind of his upside after going through discomfort in his arm. He's got his last start skipped. He'll be pitching on 10 days of rest, and he's expected to be limited with his pitch count as well. So I think that's the thing you most importantly want to look at. The Mets have stated that they're likely to be conservative with him in his first start back. So kind of for these reasons, and this applies to a lot of pitchers in similar circumstances with injury concerns, minor injury concerns, that like it's more than likely he'll play and he'll be fine, but the upside just isn't there. So that's why I'm fading him. He's not safe enough for me in cash. And then I just don't like the upside in tournaments if his ceiling is only 6 innings. So
right, and that's a great point. You always want to identify pitchers who are working deep into games. Speaking of which, Sale, who I actually the team that won tonight for me, we had Strasburg, but Sale, another complete game tonight. The innings eaters are huge, and guys who are limited in any sort of fashion, definitely avoid them, including bullpen guys. Seen some guys take pitchers who are great in terms of their peripheral stats. They have great per 9 stats, but relievers that get spot starts generally don't go deep into games.
Right.
Be avoiding those two.
Absolutely. Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about some hitters now that we got some pitchers out of the way. Who are a couple of hitters you're looking at rostering?
So on the expensive side, I think there's a variety of options that you can look to. But the first guy that I'm looking at is Polanco of the Pirates. He's just been absolutely on fire. Facing Butler, who has the highest home run per 9 allowed on the slate, which is something that I look at daily now. And I just think that he's an elite play in this spot. It's not a great park, but he's been just crushing in Pittsburgh. And even the other day, I took him 3 nights ago, and it looked like he got hurt running to first base. I was a little nervous. He'd already had kind of a good start to the game, but limps back to the dugout, goes back to the outfield, and then like a couple innings later steals a base. So it's just, it's ridiculous how good he is. Pirates are finally batting him third, and love him in the spot. The other guy I like is Corey Dickerson, who I'll talk about a ton coming up here. But he's in a great spot. Tampa Bay facing Sanchez, he's given up, the second highest home run per 9 rate so far this year of all the pitchers on the slate as well. So I like him a lot, and he has a lot of pro trends on our lineups page that you can see, and he's just in general a guy that I like to take in certain spots versus righties.
I wish you better luck with your Dickerson call than mine. I recommended him on the pod, I think, last week, and then he was out the next day for random rest. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. But the first hitter I'm looking at, though, is Michael Conforto. And this could also be for Yoenis Cespedes as well. I like both a lot. Just kind of targeting Willie Peralta. He's just not a good pitcher at all. He's allowed 31 hits in his last 3 games. He has the highest whip of all pitchers on this slate over the last 12 months. I think it's pretty important exposure to the Mets in both cash and tournaments. So you look at Conforto, he has a 391 WOBA, 277 ISO against right-handed pitchers. He's basically useless against lefties. And that's really the only concern, is that if the Brewers do bring in a lefty later in the game, it kind of eliminates one of Conforto's at bats. So there's a slight downside there. And then, but the thing is that he's only 3,400 on FanDuel. Cespedes is 4,100. So I kind of like getting both. Kind of cheated and recommended 2 players in one, but I definitely like getting exposure to these two in all formats.
You didn't cheat at all, Jay. Correlation, brother. That's another
That's
huge
true.
thing in baseball, so I love that call.
It's just cheating according to our pod guidelines, but not cheating in the real sense. So another pitcher this kind of plays into Starling Marte, who I was going to recommend as well, is Jung Ho Gong. He's hit cleanup 3 games in a row. Clint Hurdle likes the idea of having Polanco, Gong, and Marte together in the order. So the Pirates get to face Eddie Butler, like you kind of talked about. Been inconsistent for the most part. This entire season he's been pretty bad. So you look at the Pirates, they're currently implied score, I think 4.5 runs. Like you said, Butler is known to serve up the long ball. So I think you look at kind of the home run potential here with a 212 ISO against righties and positive differentials in his advanced stats in the last 15 days. Kind of like getting exposure to him a lot. He's kind of my easy play in cash on FanDuel at third base for 3,500.
It's Kong. I didn't realize. I've called him Kang forever, dude.
It's not, yeah.
I know, that's brutal. I don't watch that much baseball. Do you watch a lot of baseball, Jay?
Yeah, I watch a decent amount.
Yeah. It's a one sport for anyone who cares out there that I do think more so than others you can get away with not watching. I have watched a little bit more this year just being, on the bed being injured. But generally in the summer I try to get out and golf during the baseball games. And I think it's one sport where you're not losing too much on the subjective side relative to, say, a sport like basketball.
I 100% agree. Yeah, definitely. I think you can get away with not watching much at all, honestly. But, it's part of the sweat. It's part of the process that I like to watch a lot. But let's keep it moving with some value hitters. And we identified some high-priced pitchers, obviously, with Arrieta, a very high price tag. So what are a couple of value hitters you're looking on this slate to kind of fit with these high-priced pitchers?
Staying with the Rays, I think a popular value play is going to be Brad Miller. I like him quite a bit tomorrow against Sanchez. I think he's in a really nice spot. And again, there's a lot of home run upside. One of the legendary tournaments, one of the first 6-figure prizes I remember in DFS baseball was won by Napster Man, I believe in 2012 or 2013, and he got a double dong from Brad Miller. So I always think of the legend Napster Man, great to follow on Twitter and just a great guy overall. And he makes me reminisce about him. But I do like the Rays as a GPP stack quite a bit. That's not my stack of the day, but I do think they are a great stack, and he is a great value. And in addition to that, a guy who I think will be under-owned tomorrow, who's shown a lot of power recently and always has had it, is Bohr for Miami. Facing a righty, I think that's always a great spot. He's just really cheap at first base relative to some of these other guys who have similar power.
Agree. I like both those calls a lot, and it's a lot more difficult to kind of find value plays on DraftKings and FanDuel. So I'll identify 2 on FanDuel, but the first one I have is certainly a value play on both sites. Actually, more so on DraftKings, but it's Colin Moran, expected to start at third base most games going forward when they face a right-handed pitcher. So I'm fully expecting him to play in this one. I think more than anything is his price. He's just so underpriced, kind of with his upside that he has. You're looking at a guy who's minimum price on DraftKings, so $2K, and he's just $2,200 on FanDuel. So I think you're looking at ways in tournaments to really save money, and you get a guy at minimum price on DK who has upside. The Astros are implied to score the most runs on this slate. So I think exposure is necessary. A lot of their hitters you look at are very expensive, so you kind of go to Moran here at a very, very cheap price and gain exposure that way. He can be part of stacks. He can be a standalone play as a salary relief player. So I like getting exposure to him a lot, just mainly due to his salary. He hasn't shown too much power. I'm curious to see kind of how he develops in that regard. He's never a big home run hitter in the minors, but he made great contact, a good average hitter, and he has a really good ability to rack up doubles. So I'm fine paying 2K for the upside with him as part of a stack. And then the other guy I'm looking at is David Wright. Actually, he's just 2,700 on FanDuel. He has a 93% bargain rating. I'm looking at exposure to Wright in mainly tournaments. In cash, I already told you I'm going Gong, but I like mixing it up in GPPs. So he's been really, really bad lately, struggling big time. But if you look at advanced, he's second in all of baseball in hard hit percentage. So I like the upside he brings here. Obviously, it's a good spot for the Mets. Targeting Willie Peralta, something I alluded to before this. So Wright's just basically another piece of exposure to Peralta that I want. And when I was doing research for him, just as a side note really quick, I was very curious to who's leading the league in soft hit percentage. Do you have any guesses at that? Or no?
Who's leading the league? Which batters constantly hitting the softest?
Yeah, the highest soft hit percentage in baseball.
Oh man,
it's tough, man.
Is it an obvious name?
Nah, not really.
I would guess someone like Iglesias or something like that for the Tigers.
It's actually Jason Hayward, which
Wow.
makes sense for how soft he is as a person. After he did the Braves dirty, then he left the Cards after just 1 year. So that's one of those things. Once you're soft, you're always soft.
Wow.
It's the highest soft hit rating in baseball. So pretty surprising.
He burned me pretty good in the early only today as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, my stat of the day, which we haven't gotten to yet, but it should be Hayward's 1 home run in 159 plate appearances this season. That's pretty good. But let's move on. Let's keep it going.
I am tilted now.
Oh, it wasn't a bad play, but you just got to know when you're rostering the softest player in baseball. Fact.
Brutal.
Bounce back and give us your stack of the day that you're looking at.
My stack of the day is the Pirates going against my Rockies. I think that they're an elite stack in this spot. They've been somewhat popular lately, but they might go under-owned relative to some of these other high team totals tomorrow. And I think there's a ton of upside throughout the entire lineup. Home run upside, which is obviously critical when you're making a stack. And even though they're at home, which in general I like to take road teams, I still think it's a great spot. And we had someone ask about how we look at park factor when evaluating teams and making teams. In general, I'm always looking for guys who are shifting to a better park or in a good environment. But sometimes players are just too cheap in spots. Like tonight, I took Reddick from Oakland, even in Oakland, but he was facing a righty that can give up some home runs. So I do think it's an important factor, but I'm not going to exclude people who are in bad parks.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's tough just writing people off because they're in a bad park, because a lot of people do kind of look at that, and I think you can get guys at lower ownership who aren't necessarily in horrible situations overall. And this kind of plays into my stack, actually. Is my sneaky stack is going to be the Yankees. They're facing Sonny Gray, who has struggled with his location.
Fraud Gray.
What?
He's a fraud.
Oh, yeah, he is a huge fraud, man. He's allowed a solid amount of home runs as well, so lots of walks, decent amount of home runs. The Yankees' offense has not been great recently, which will drive ownership down a lot, and that's kind of the main reason I like them. I'm looking at this 15-game slate in terms of ownership and thinking which stacks can I afford with these higher-priced pitchers, and which stacks have upside, which stacks are going to be very overlooked. And I think the Yankees kind of fit the bill. They're playing at a difficult park factor going into Oakland. But the thing is with Oakland, you look at Sonny Gray, who I talked about, but their bullpen is also one of the worst bullpens in baseball. So I think if Gray continues to struggle in this one and not really last very long in this game, I like the Yankees upside quite a bit going against their relief pitchers. So they're currently implied to just score 3.7 runs. So I think a lot of people are going to write them off. I expect all of their hitters to be incredibly low owned.
Love it.
All right, let's keep it moving, and let's hear your stat of the day. What do you got for us?
The stat of the day for me is basically Eddie Butler's giving up the most home runs, over 1.8 home runs per 9 innings on the year. And it's, this stat is, on its own, it's whatever, but I really want to, bring home that you should be looking at home runs allowed for the pitcher. It's not all about the hitter and their WOBA and all their splits, against a certain handedness. You want to be looking at what the pitcher gives up. And I think it's something that's not talked about enough. So Identifying the guys who give up the most home runs is a really great way to find value and find upside in stacks, and that's why I like the Pirate stack so much. Bales, when he won the Playboy Q, I think he was targeting Finnegan with his Indian stack, and Finnegan was the pitcher who had the highest home run per nine rate allowed on the slate. So take advantage of that stat. It's on the player models and something that I'm looking at every day.
Yeah, and actually, I think we hyped that Cleveland stack on the pod that night, and also bring up their bullpen too as well. The Reds, pretty bad bullpen, so good on you and Bales going back to back. Pretty dominant there. Good stretch, and yeah, like the stat of the day.
You got a good stat of the day, Jay.
I don't know. Oh yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I'll get into it right now. My stat of the day is Jason Worth's 714 slugging percentage against left-handed pitchers in the last 12 months. It leads all hitters on the slate in terms of splits versus the handedness of pitcher they're facing. He gets to face lefty Justin Nicolino. To kind of put this into context, David Ortiz, who we think against righties is just the greatest splits of all time, has a 649 slugging percentage versus righties. So you look at a 714 slugging percentage, I think that stands out a lot to me, kind of looking at hitters on this slate, especially guys you think might get a little bit overlooked. So kind of keying in on split differentials, like Worth stands at the top of a lot of them. So, which parlays us into our next topic. You can kick things off with your bold call of the day.
All right, my bold call of the day is not super bold, but it is interesting. I am going that Corey Dickerson will have the most fantasy points of any hitter on the slate. I absolutely love Corey Dickerson tomorrow. I think that this is a great spot for him. He's a former Rocky, so obviously I'm biased, but I think he matches up very well with Sanchez, who gives up a lot of homers. And against a righty here, I just really, really like the spot. A lot of things pointing me in the direction of him. So that's my bold call of the day. I'm even going to call it double dong. If he only hits one home run, it's not even a good call. He has to hit 2 home runs for it to be solid.
Okay, well, I hope he plays for your sake. I had the same thoughts.
I'll say that if he doesn't play, then I was right anyways. I'll just take the credit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, I like Dickerson a lot too. Stupid Rockies, man. Just making bad move after bad move.
That's the Rockies.
Yep. Yeah, we're used to it. My bold call of the day actually ties in specifically with my stat of the day. My bold call of the day is that Jason Worth hits a home run. I'm not going to call it double dong. I'm not that bold. But you look at Worth this season, he has 3 home runs in just 19 at-bats versus lefties, compared to 3 in 107 at-bats versus righties. So you look at him historically against lefties, good matchup, obviously home run potential. So my bold call is a home run from Worth, which I think I'm going to have a lot of ownership to.
All right. I like that call, Jay, and I definitely will be sprinkling in some Worth and GPPs.
Have to. But yeah, all right, guys, that's the pod for you. Pete, you got any kind of last thoughts on this slate overall?
Oh, it's a great slate, but not nearly as great as this Reese's Mini that I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah, I've been eating Sour Patch Kids like half the pot.
Yeah, so Jay and I are gonna go off and eat some candy, and we may not wake up tomorrow because of all the sugar intake that we have. But at least you guys will have this pod, and hope to see some more big wins out of the Fantasy Labs crew and the Fantasy Labs subscribers.
Absolutely, it's a pod for you guys. Remember to check out John's slate breakdown as well as this pod, and then our plays of the day that will be released in the middle of the day tomorrow to kind of get full coverage on this nice 15-game slate. So good luck on this slate. We'll be back with you guys on Sunday night to break down Monday's slate.